Okay, in this video, we are going to actually work on changing our self-talk. Okay, we're going to learn some strategies of how to identify our patterns and then change those patterns. But before we get started, I need to provide a kind of disclaimer. So this is not mental health therapy grade kind of corrections. Okay, a lot of this comes from therapeutic resources, but sports psychology is not traditional counseling or therapy. Sports psychologists, we call them psychologists, but only certain people could actually put that label on their business card. Okay, they would need to be certified in sports psychology and as a licensed counselor. So those are two different career fields that they would need to have in order to say, I am a sports psychologist. Now, a sports psychology consultant can have a certification through AASP, and they have a little bit of information from psychology, from counseling, from sports science. Actually, they have a lot of that information, but they are not licensed therapists. So what we do in sports psychology is a little different. Okay, so we aren't qualified to be treating any type of mental health disorders, specifically like depression and anxiety. Those are super common. And I mean, they were super common, and then COVID and self-quarantine and all of that happened, and I'm certain that those rates are going to go up. Actually, I know that. I know mental health workers are just overwhelmed by the increases in their clients and the calls and all of that. I mean, it's a lot. It is a lot. And we were already overloaded. So when we look at our patterns of self-talk, what you might find is that you see a pattern of negative self-talk. That doesn't mean you have depression. Okay, it could be an indicator. And if you're worried about it, please reach out. Okay. If you struggle to find the positive, that could be an indicator. If you find that you have a lot of negative self-talk and it falls into that worry category, that could be an indicator of some anxiety issues. Neither of those are diagnosable. Okay. From what we're going to do, you would need to seek treatment, from an actual certified person. And I'm not certified to do that. But I do encourage you to seek help. I think everyone should go to therapy at some point. It just gives you, it teaches you some tools that you didn't realize you didn't have. Okay. So, we're not taught how to manage our emotions. We're not taught how to control our thoughts. We're doing it right now. But in general, we're not taught that as we grow up. We don't know how to be human in that way. I mean, a lot of us, how many of you played on a team and the way that your coach or maybe your parents taught you to handle your emotions was to suck it up? That's not a healthy way to deal with them, right? We don't want it on the court or the field, but you've got to deal with them. You've got to process them at some point. And if we don't, those spiral into depression and anxiety and other mental health issues. Okay, so that's my disclaimer, and I guess my soapbox message for you is, talk about it. Okay, go seek treatment and do not be ashamed. You weren't taught those things, but you're human and you have to deal with them. Okay, so please seek treatment from someone who knows what they're doing. Okay, so what we're going to do is work on our self-talk, but not in addressing our mental health issues. We're working on our performance issues. Okay, specifically academics or sport. All right, so let's get started. And think about if you played for a coach who talked to you the way that you talk to yourself, would you stay on that team or would you be out of there? So just to remind you how important it is that we change that behavior of self-talk, I want to show you this cycle again. So remember what's happening inside our head, that invisible little script that no one else sees or hears. I guess we couldn't see it. No one else hears it but us. That is impacting our expectations. Expectations impact performance. Performance validates what we thought already. And then that goes into play to affect our confidence and motivation. That's a pretty detailed cycle. Okay, I didn't make this up. This comes from research and textbooks. Okay, so that's a pretty detailed cycle that we know exists. If we are going to change self-talk, it's going to take a lot of work. Okay, it's not easy. If you've ever tried to add one behavior to your life, like let's say you were trying to drink more water, or maybe I don't know, pick up your clothes, wash the dishes immediately after dinner, whatever. You're trying to add one behavior to your life. That's hard because we get in these routines, and our brains store goals differently than we store habits. So when we're like, man, I wish that I could wash the dishes every night after dinner. Great. But our brains store that as like a dream, as a wish, not as an actual behavior. Not until we do it enough that it becomes automatic, okay? Or it just becomes the default. That said, let's talk about what happens in your brain. We're not going to dig too deeply into this, but the short of it is when neurons fire together, they wire together. So have you ever seen something and it scared you, and now when you see that thing, you kind of like maybe it was a spider, maybe, I don't know, it could be anything, or maybe a smell that like you associate with something, or maybe it's a good smell, right? Maybe you associate it with being at your grandma's, or growing up, or something positive. So when those neurons fire together, so we have this emotional experience, and we store that in our brain. When they fire together, they wire together. So if you have negative self-talk patterns, there's a huge chance that there's not a chance. This is what's happened. Your neurons have been wiring together all of this time. So this whole time you've been talking to yourself negatively, your neurons have been like, all right, let's do this. This is what we do. And when those neurons have wired together, that becomes the default path that they take. So it's kind of like walking through the woods, and you see a path that has been, well worn, and somebody has gone down it a lot. You're probably going to take that path instead of trying to make a new one through the brush. That's what's happening in your brain with your neurons. When they are connected, when we set up these pathways and we do it over and over and over again, that becomes the default. That becomes the easiest path to take, and our brain likes that, okay? So that's why it's so hard to form new habits, because the old habit is the worn path. And when we're trying to make a new habit, we have to create a whole new path in our brain. So not only are you've got this negative pathway to deal with, you're trying to build a new one and keep your brain from going down the other pathway. Okay. So it's like, I imagine trying to get like a toddler to not go down that path while you build a whole new pathway. You're clearing the brush for this new one. Meanwhile, the toddler's like, nah, but there's a path right here. Let's go. Let's go. That's what we're going to be dealing with. Okay. So it's not going to be easy, but we can do it. So all of this time has been building up to this slide. We are trying to change our negative self-talk. Because if you've got positive self-talk, you're probably not going to want to change it to negative. So we're going to try to change that negative into positive. And we pretty much have three options, okay? The first one, I've got these little icons here. I know we live in the age of icons, so these are to kind of help you try to remember. So we're going to either stop the negative, okay? So we've got these negative patterns, these negative self-talk statements that our brain wants to go. We're going to stop it, okay? Just, that's it. That's one option. The second option is to, when we experience that, we just add information, right? So we let the negative happen, okay? But then we add information so that it's more helpful, and we can that kind of converts it to more positive, right? At least it's not really positive, it's just more useful, okay? And then the third thing is we notice the negative self-talk, we pause, and then we convert it into positive. So we're going to look at the details, good and bad of this, right? So the problem with just stopping negative ones, because that seems super easy, right? Having a negative self-talk, just stop it. The problem is that we make ironic errors, okay? I want you to not look at this black spot in between my arm. Don't look at it. Just keep looking at everything else, okay? What are you looking at immediately? The black spot, okay? If you were ever a little kid, we're just dealing with all kinds of little toddlers. If you're a little kid and your parents or somebody told you don't touch that, what was the one thing that you wanted to do? Touch the thing, right? Like touch that breakable thing. So we make ironic errors. It's when we're so worried about not doing something that we end up doing it anyway. So even though just stopping the negative self-talk makes sense, it doesn't work for us psychologically. It also creates a what the hell effect, which immediately, if you are prone to negative self-talk and you hear the what the hell effect, it doesn't seem like a good combination. So the what the hell effect is when you're trying to do something, like happens a lot with diets. So we're trying to do something, eating better, and we end up, I don't know, we accidentally eat a donut. What the hell effect comes on. We're like, what the hell? I give up, right? Not even going to try. So we find this a lot of times when we're trying to restrict things. So if you're trying to stop drinking sodas, stop procrastinating, all of those stop kind of things, we find this effect, okay? So this doesn't seem to set us up very well for this strategy working. It might, but psychologically, not a good setup. So now we get another option, add information. So we say the negative thing, and we're going to add information. Remember back in the first video, we had two different examples. The athlete missed the shot, and one of them was, you idiot, why did you, like one of the statements was, you idiot, why did you even think that you should have made that? Why are you on this team? That is criticism, okay? It's negative. So the mistake happened, and we just say the bad things. But when we add information, it changes that into positive feedback because it's a correction, not a criticism, okay? If you're trying to train your dog and your dog messes up, do you criticize your dog? You idiot, what are you doing? No, you look for the good times, okay? You look for the good things, the times that you can call him a good boy, right? And he can be happy. So we add the information, let him know what he is doing well, let ourselves know what we're doing well, and that converts it into a positive statement. So it's that easy. We hear that negative thing happening, we stop, we add the information. Oh, you messed up, Why did I mess up? This is why I messed up. Here's how I can fix it to move forward in the future, okay? Just that part. Now, we can also, we can just convert it to positive, okay? The thing with that is it requires a pause, which we're not always good at doing because, like the path through the woods, our brains just go. But it requires us to pause, and it requires us to convince ourselves. So this one is full of information, okay? Very specific ways to change. This one deals with more just adding that positive. No, you know what? You're a good person. You're trying really hard. Kind of that general motivational kind of thing. So we add the positive layer to it. So you can look at it with both of these. Your worksheet has you go through and do a little exercise where it's the A, B, C, and then the D. So you talk about, you convince yourself, you explain why what you just said that was positive is actually true. So it's like providing evidence in a court. So we have to believe it. We can't just feed ourselves positive things. We have to believe it. If we don't believe what we're saying to ourselves, it's going to be pointless, okay? So these are our options, okay? These are main options, and your worksheet is going to deal with this. It's going to ask you kind of get to pick which ones you think will work for you, but it's going to mainly ask you to write down your statements, find your patterns, and then convert some of your statements into more positive, so you can go with information rich or general positive. But if you go with a positive, then you have to add that convincing element. Make sure that you believe it. Now that you've identified your patterns of negative self-talk, what you can do is take the positive and make it more effective. So essentially, see all these little tricks here, but basically you want to keep it short and sweet, repeat it a lot, so that you create that path in your brain. Those neurons fire together and wire together, and then your self-talk becomes more believable, it becomes easy, and it kind of becomes your default, your go-to. So one of the things that I put here is that you may want to start out talking in third person. So, saying things using your own name. It may feel a little weird, but sometimes it helps you believe it. And then you want to go for first person, right? So you talk to yourself nicely from first person. All right, grab your worksheet and get started on that. Make your negative positive and make your positive